A billionaire CEO finds a baby girl at his wife's grave, only to be stunned by what she says. "You came to see my mother too." He is stunned, staring at the name on the gravestone, his late wife. But who is this child? And what secrets did his wife take to the grave? The oak trees along the path had shed most of their leaves, carpeting the gravel with a soft rustle underfoot. Mist clung to the air in thin swirls, curling around the iron gate of Oak Ridge Cemetery like fingers reluctant to let go. The marble headstones stood in solemn rows, some faded with time, others newly etched. Jacob Blake stepped through the entrance with the quiet certainty of a man who had walked these grounds far too often. He carried nothing but a single white lily wrapped in butcher paper, its stem trembling slightly in the breeze. His long coat snapped gently at the knees as he followed the familiar trail, turning left at the old cedar until he reached her. Sandra Blake. The name carved on the granite was clean and elegant, just like she had been. He stared at it for a moment, then crouched to place the flower against the base of the stone. Before the moment could settle, something shifted to his right. A flicker of movement, a small breath. A child sat quietly by the grave. Her knees were tucked against her chest, arms wrapped around a well-loved, nearly threadbare teddy bear. She couldn't have been older than 7 or 8. Her coat was too thin for late November, and the laces of her shoes trailed in the damp dirt. Jacob blinked. He wasn't used to company here, especially not this kind. He cleared his throat softly. "Are you lost?" The girl didn't flinch. Her voice was quiet, almost matter-of-fact. "No." He hesitated. "Do you know who this is?" he asked, nodding toward the headstone. She finally turned her eyes to him. Large, round, slate grey, the same color as Sandra's. "Sandra," she said simply. "She's my mother." Jacob straightened slowly, breath catching like he'd been shoved. It wasn't just the eyes. There was something about the curve of the jaw, the way the girl's voice lifted just at the end of the sentence. "Your mother," he repeated carefully. She nodded and looked back at the stone. "I come here a lot." "How did you get here?" She shrugged one shoulder. "Walked from the bus stop." A man appeared in the distance, a wool hat pulled low on his brow. It was Walter, the old groundskeeper, pushing his wheelbarrow toward the row of older plots. Jacob called to him, waving him over. "Walter," he said in a low voice. "You seen her before?" Walter took one look at the girl and nodded. "Yeah, she's been coming for weeks. Always sits quiet. Figured she was family." Jacob stared at the girl again, the tension between his eyebrows tightening. She never came with anyone. First couple of times, she had an older lady with her, short, white hair. Since then, always alone. The girl stood up, brushing a leaf from her sleeve. She turned back toward the stone. "Her name's Sandra Blake, right?" "Yes." Jacob's voice came out rougher than intended. She was really pretty. Jacob swallowed. She was. The girl looked at him for a long moment. "You made her smile." He opened his mouth, then closed it again. "I tried." She seemed to accept this. "Then maybe you're the man she wrote about." "What do you mean?" "She used to tell me stories," the girl said softly. "About someone who brought her sunflowers and made bad pancakes. She never said your name. Just him." Jacob felt the air shift in his chest. His hand moved to his pocket, instinctively reaching for his phone, for some anchor to make sense of this. "What's your name?" he asked. "Lily," she replied. "Lily Mitchell." He paused. "Mitchell? She lives with me, Ms. Joan Mitchell. She takes care of a lot of kids, but I've been with her the longest." Jacob's eyes narrowed. "Do you have anything from Sandra?" Lily hesitated, then pulled something from under the collar of her coat. A small, heart-shaped locket hung on a fraying chain. The metal was dulled with age. She opened it and showed him. One side had a photo of a much younger Sandra. The other was empty. "She left it with me," Lily said. "Ms. Joan says it's the only thing she gave them." Jacob stared at the photo, his stomach lurching. That picture had been taken years before they'd even met. Sandra's hair was longer then, her smile almost shy, the same smile Lily wore when she spoke about her. "What happened to your father?" he asked gently. Lily looked down. "I don't know. Mum never said." Jacob crouched so they were at eye level. "Did Sandra ever mention me?" "She didn't use names," Lily said, "but I think she meant you." "How?" Lily's voice was barely a whisper. She said she made the hardest decision in her life, and that sometimes love meant walking away. Behind them, Walter cleared his throat and muttered something about finishing up the south row. He left them there, two strangers bound by something unspoken. Jacob stood slowly, wiping a hand across his mouth. "Where's Miss Mitchell now?" "At home," Lily said. "She let me come on my own today. She trusts me." Jacob glanced at his watch, then back at the girl. "Will you let me walk you to the bus stop?" Lily nodded. As they turned down the path, Jacob looked back one last time at the headstone. The name seemed heavier now, as if the letters themselves knew they'd been hiding something. They walked in silence, side by side. He didn't reach for her hand, and she didn't offer it. But with each step, something softened. And behind them, in the fading mist, the grave watched like a memory, unwilling to stay buried. The front steps of Brookside Haven creaked beneath their feet as the winter air bit through the fading afternoon. Paint peeled from the railings, and rust feathered the edges of the old metal mailbox. A wind chime on the porch rang out, an uneven, almost sorrowful tune, as the door opened. Jacob Blake had always thought of places like this in abstract terms. Charities on end-of-year donation forms, shelters mentioned in small print at galas. But standing here with Lily beside him, cheeks pink from the cold and boots wet from the walk, it all felt disturbingly real. A woman appeared in the doorway. She was small, no taller than Lily, with a long braid of grey hair hanging down her back and sharp eyes that seemed to assess Jacob in a single glance. "You're Joan Mitchell?" he asked. "I am," she replied evenly, not moving from the threshold. "I know who you are," she interrupted. Her gaze flicked briefly to Lily, then back. "Sandra told me enough to know you'd find your way here eventually." Jacob exhaled. "Did she ever mean to tell me?" "She wanted to," Joan said, her tone neither warm nor cold, just tired. "But fear gets louder the closer you get to the truth." Lily stepped past Joan and into the house without a word. Jacob hesitated at the door. Joan studied him for another beat, then stepped aside. "Come in. She's already heard more than a child should." Inside, the house smelled of old pine, chalk dust, and something faintly sweet. Maybe cinnamon. Toys lay scattered near the baseboards. A shelf lined with mismatched books leaned slightly to one side. It wasn't disorderly, just lived in. Joan led him into what must have once been a dining room, but now held two desks, a corkboard covered in schedules, and a table with a chipped tea kettle resting on top. Jacob didn't sit. "Why didn't you ever reach out?" he asked. Joan poured tea into two mismatched mugs, her movements slow, but sure. "Because she made me promise. Sandra was clear. No contact, no letters, not even if Lily asked. She didn't want me to know I had a daughter. She didn't want you to lose what you had," Joan replied, pushing one mug across the table. "She said loving you meant letting you go." Jacob didn't touch the tea. "You think I couldn't have handled it?" I think you were the part of her life that made her feel safe, Joan said softly, and she didn't want to risk that, not even with the truth. He didn't answer. Instead, his eyes drifted to the wall beside him, where a collage of children's drawings was tacked with care. In one, a figure with silver hair stood between two others, one small, one tall. Joan followed his gaze. Lily doesn't draw Sandra much, but she talks about her, always has. She said Sandra left her a locket. Joan reached into a small drawer by the window and pulled out a letter, creased and yellowing. She left this, too. Told me to give it to you if you ever came looking. Jacob hesitated, then took it with both hands. He didn't open it. The envelope felt heavier than it should have. The ink faded, but unmistakable. His name in Sandra's handwriting, a loop on the J, the B, written with a slight left tilt. She came to your building once, Joan said suddenly. Stood outside for almost an hour. I drove her there. She never went in. When was that? Jacob's voice was low. A week before she died. He turned the envelope over slowly in his hands. She wasn't ready, Joan added. Maybe she thought you'd moved on. Maybe she was just scared. From the hallway, a soft voice interrupted. Was it true? They both turned to see Lily standing there, small hands curled into the sleeves of her sweater. Her eyes found Joan's first, then Jacob's. Did she leave because of me? Joan opened her mouth, but Jacob stood first. No, he said gently. She left because she was trying to protect you. And maybe me too. Lily nodded, lips pressed tightly together. She walked over and stood beside Jacob, not touching him, but close enough he could feel her warmth. After a moment, she asked, Did you love her? Jacob met her eyes. Yes. She said you made bad pancakes. He let out a small, breathy laugh. That sounds about right. Joan rose and crossed the room, placing a hand on Lily's back. Why don't you go find Tommy? He was asking about you earlier. Lily glanced up. He thinks Jacob's my new dad. Jacob and Joan both paused. I didn't say anything, Lily added quickly. You didn't have to, Jacob said. It's okay. She lingered a moment longer, then disappeared down the hall. When the room was quiet again, Joan spoke without looking at him. She's a good kid, stronger than she looks. So was Sandra. She got that from her mother, Joan murmured. But that quiet hope, that part of her that never stopped waiting, I think Lily got that from you. Jacob didn't answer. He just stood there in the stillness, the letter still unopened in his hand, and wondered how many more truths he was still too afraid to read. Before we get into the next part, I would love to know who you are listening to this video with. Glass and steel shimmered along the skyline as twilight bled into the edges of downtown Seattle. Jacob's penthouse, perched high above Capitol Hill, caught the last gold streaks of day, like a fading memory. Inside, the silence was thick. Pristine furniture, polished floors, and corners too perfect for echoes. The elevator doors opened with a muted chime. Jacob stepped out first, carrying Lily's small backpack over his shoulder. She followed close behind, her hand gripping the fraying ear of her teddy bear. She paused just past the threshold, eyes roaming slowly across the space. This is big, she murmured. Jacob offered a slight nod, setting the bag down near the wall. It's quiet too. Lily didn't respond. She walked over to the wide floor-to-ceiling windows, her reflection thin and ghost-like against the lights below. He watched her take it in, how her fingers hovered above the sleek countertop, how her gaze settled briefly on the abstract art on the wall, then flicked away as if afraid to stay too long in one place. I don't have much for kids here, Jacob admitted, but we can fix that. Lily turned toward him. I don't need toys. Her voice wasn't bitter, just honest. He gestured toward the hallway. "There are 2 guest rooms. You can pick either." She hesitated before asking, "Which one's quieter?" "That one," he pointed left. "It doesn't get much street noise." She gave a short nod. "I like quiet. It's easier to think." Jacob led her down the hallway, pausing at the doorway. The room was simple, a queen bed with a navy duvet, a single dresser, no decorations. He stepped aside to let her in. "You can move anything you want," he said. "Make it yours if you want." Lily sat on the edge of the bed, her feet not touching the floor. She didn't say anything. "I'll be in the other room if you need anything," he added. She looked up at him, expression unreadable. "Do you lock the doors at night?" Jacob blinked, caught off guard. "Only the front one." Lily nodded again and turned toward the window. Back in the living room, Jacob opened the fridge. 2 bottles of sparkling water, half a lemon, and a leftover takeout box. He closed it. A few minutes later, he placed a bowl of dry cereal on the island counter. Lily emerged quietly, still holding her teddy bear, and took a seat on the stool without a word. She looked at the cereal. "No milk," he said. "Sorry." She picked up the spoon. "It's okay. I like it better like this anyway." He watched her eat in silence, surprised by how intentional each movement was. No mess, no crumbs, just calm, careful bites. As she pushed the bowl away, she asked, "Who's in that picture?" He followed her gaze to the framed photo on the mantel. Sandra stood in the sun, head tilted back mid-laugh, her hand shielding her eyes. Jacob walked over, lifted the frame, and held it in his hands like something fragile. "That's Sandra," he said softly. "Your mum." She looked happy, Lily whispered, standing beside him now. "She was," Jacob replied. "But not always." Lily glanced up. "Because of you?" The question wasn't accusatory, just curious. He took a breath. "Maybe. Sometimes because of life." They stood in silence for a long moment. "She used to tell me stories," Lily said, voice soft. "About someone who made pancakes that stuck to the pan. She laughed every time." Jacob smiled faintly. "I was never good at breakfast." Lily tilted her head. "I think she loved that part." The moment stretched gently between them. A buzz from the kitchen broke it, his phone vibrating against the marble counter. Jacob glanced at the screen. "Daniel," he answered, turning slightly away. "Everything all right, sir?" Daniel's voice was cautious. "I need you to cancel tomorrow morning. Reschedule the board call." There was a pause. "You never miss those." "I know," Jacob said, eyes flicking toward Lily. "Just clear it." "Okay." Jacob ended the call and leaned on the counter. Lily was now curled on the sofa, her knees tucked under her, flipping through a book she'd pulled from the shelf. He walked over and crouched beside her. "Do you want to see the city lights?" She shrugged. "Maybe later." He stood again, unsure what to say next. Everything felt new, in a way that unsettled him. She closed the book slowly and looked up. "Will I stay here? Just for tonight?" Jacob met her gaze. "As long as you want, or need." Lily didn't answer, but she unfolded the blanket draped over the back of the couch and pulled it over her legs. Jacob turned out the lights in the hallway as he passed, pausing once outside her room. That night, finally, the penthouse didn't feel cold. It didn't feel like home yet, but it didn't feel empty either. Grey light filtered in through the penthouse windows, muted by heavy clouds rolling in from Puget Sound. The early hush of morning pressed gently against the glass, broken only by the soft hum of the refrigerator. The kitchen, all chrome and clean lines, felt too pristine for the mess about to unfold. Jacob stared down at the frying pan like it might explode. The eggs were sticking, again. He poked at them with the spatula, muttering under his breath. The stovetop sizzled in protest. Behind him, he heard a quiet shuffle. Lily stood at the kitchen entrance, hair slightly tangled, the sleeves of her oversized sweatshirt covering her hands. She watched him for a beat. "That's not how Joan does it," she said, voice dry. Jacob turned with a sheepish half-smile. "You don't say. She uses butter, not spray." He looked at the can on the counter, then back at the pan, defeated. Noted. Lily padded over to the counter, climbing up onto one of the stools. She didn't look like she expected much. He slid a plate toward her, with something vaguely resembling scrambled eggs. "No toast," he said. "Or juice. Just eggs and overconfidence." She picked up the fork, poked the eggs. "They're warm. That's something." Jacob leaned against the counter, watching her eat. "Did you sleep okay?" She shrugged. "The bed's soft. Too soft." "Is that a bad thing?" "Just different." He nodded, glancing out the window. Different takes time. For a while, they ate in silence. Jacob's coffee sat untouched beside him. Across from him, Lily adjusted her fork on the napkin after every bite, perfectly lined, edge to edge. "You always do that?" he asked. She paused. "Makes it feel neater." He didn't ask more. Eventually, he said, "Have you ever been to school?" Lily looked up, chewing slowly. "A little. Miss Joan tried to teach us, but she had too many kids, and some of them needed more help than I did." Jacob watched her. There was no self-pity in her voice, just quiet acceptance, like someone used to being last in line. "What kind of things did you learn?" "Reading. Some math. We watched nature documentaries sometimes, one about jellyfish that glow in the dark." "Bioluminescence," Jacob said. Lily nodded. "They looked like lanterns floating in the ocean." He smiled. "You remember that?" "I remember a lot of things," she said. Then more softly, "Even when I don't want to." Jacob's phone buzzed from the counter. He reached for it, glanced at the name, Daniel. He picked it up and walked a few steps away, keeping his voice low. "Daniel." "Morning, sir. You need anything?" "I need you to find everything you can about Sandra, especially before she and I met. The missing years." There was a pause. "This about the girl." Jacob looked back at Lily, now rinsing her plate in the sink without being asked. "It's about the things I should have known," he said. "I'll start with DMV and social records. See what turns up." "Discreetly, Daniel. Always." Jacob ended the call. When he turned back, Lily was wiping the counter with a paper towel. "You don't have to do that," he said. She shrugged. "I always help clean." He stepped closer, leaned against the opposite side of the island. "If you could go to school now, would you want to?" She hesitated. "Would they know?" "Know what?" "That I don't really belong." Jacob considered that. "I think everyone feels that way at first, even the ones who've been there forever." Lily sat down again, hugging her knees to her chest. "Miss Jones said I was smart, but she also said I was hard to place." "What does that mean?" "It means people came to see the other kids, not me." Jacob's jaw clenched. He looked at her for a long moment. "Well, they were wrong." Lily tilted her head. "You don't even know me." "I'm starting to," he said, "and I haven't seen anything that would make me think otherwise." She didn't smile, but her shoulders eased, just slightly. "I think I'd like to try school," she said after a while, "but only if it's okay to be quiet sometimes." "It's more than okay," Jacob said. "It's encouraged in some places." She nodded. "Okay." They sat like that for a moment, in the soft light of the morning. Jacob picked up his phone again, thumbs hovering. A text to Daniel. "Also check schools. Something small. Somewhere she won't get lost." He hit send. When he looked back up, Lily was watching him. Her voice was barely above a whisper. "Do you think my mum would have wanted me here? With you?" Jacob paused. "I think she hoped for it." "That's not the same." He nodded slowly. "Number, it's not, but I'm here, and so are you." Lily didn't respond right away. Then, simply, "Okay." And for now, that was enough. Afternoon haze pressed against the windows of Jacob's office like a weight. The room, usually sterile and composed, now carried a strange undercurrent, too quiet, too still. Outside, the city moved on in patterns he once controlled. Inside, he sat motionless. The file sat in front of him. Thick, manila, heavy in all the wrong ways. Daniel leaned against the edge of the desk, arms crossed, gaze hesitant. "You sure you want to read this now?" Jacob didn't answer. He opened the folder. The first document was Lily's birth certificate. His eyes tracked the typewritten lines until he landed on the blank space where the father's name should have been. There was something about that emptiness. Intentional. Silent. Absolute. "She didn't even write a placeholder," he said quietly. Daniel exhaled. "I noticed that." He flipped to the next section, placement reports, each one more fragmented than the last. 6 different homes in 4 years, brief notations scribbled by caseworkers. Withdrawn but cooperative. Runs when overwhelmed. Unattached. Jacob's jaw tightened. "She ran away twice," Daniel said. "Last one was a group home in Renton. They found her at a transit station in the middle of the night, hugging a duffel bag." "She was 8, Jacob murmured. 8. Daniel gave a slow nod. "There's more. Not in the official records, just something one of my contacts found buried in a sealed request." He reached into his own folder, pulled out a thin document and handed it over. "What is this?" Jacob asked. "DNA testing requisition, filed 9 years ago under a pseudonym, but the hospital's internal system kept metadata. The name Sandra Blake used when she submitted it matched her insurance ID at the time." Jacob scanned the form. The field for alleged father stopped him cold. Mark Donovan. The name hit like ice against the spine. He leaned back, slow and deliberate, eyes still locked on the paper. Sandra thought it might be him. "She never completed the test," Daniel added. "No follow-up. No results. Just this request." Then she disappeared off the radar. Jacob didn't speak for a while. He ran a hand through his hair, then stood and walked to the window. The skyline stretched out like a chessboard. He had played that game with Mark Donovan once, many times in fact, never on equal footing, but always dangerously close. "Jesus," he muttered. "Mark." Daniel's voice softened. "You think it's possible?" Jacob laughed once, bitter and low. "Everything's possible with Donovan. But likely, that's different." They stood in silence. Then Daniel said, "You want to find out for sure?" Jacob turned. Quietly. "No labs connected to me, nothing traceable. If he finds out too early, he'll come looking." Jacob nodded. "Exactly." Daniel moved to pack up the file, but Jacob stopped him. "Leave it." "You sure?" Jacob flipped back to Lily's birth certificate. "I need to see this. Really see it." Daniel paused at the door. "You think Sandra knew?" Jacob's eyes flicked up. "If she filed this request, she suspected something, and still didn't tell you." Jacob didn't flinch. She was trying to protect us, or maybe herself. Maybe both. After Daniel left, Jacob remained by the window. Below, people moved like tiny figures in some model city. Neat, predictable, replaceable. Unlike Lily. He thought about the way she lined up her silverware, the way she asked if people at school would know, the way she asked if her mother hoped, not wanted. He thought about Sandra, standing alone in some clinic, signing her name on a form that would never be filed. Jacob returned to the desk, pulled out his phone, and dialed. It rang twice. "Yeah?" Daniel's voice was sharp. "I need a second check," Jacob said. "This time, focus on Donovan, connections to Sandra, anything off record, discrete contacts, legal history, charity records, board affiliations." "Looking for what exactly?" "Patterns," Jacob said. "Reasons why Sandra wouldn't tell him. Or me." "Understood." Jacob ended the call and stared down at the name again. Mark Donovan. They'd shared conference tables, fundraisers, the occasional hostile takeover. But Mark had always been a step above, richer, colder, untouchable. And now, maybe... He closed the file. The room felt smaller than before. From the hallway, soft footsteps approached. Lily peeked into the doorway, her oversized hoodie almost swallowing her frame. "You didn't come out for lunch?" she said. Jacob blinked. Didn't notice the time. She stepped in, eyes scanning the papers on his desk. "Are those... about me?" He hesitated. "Some of them, yes." Her voice was very quiet. "Is it bad stuff?" "No," Jacob said. "It's just stuff I should have known earlier." Lily walked closer. "You mad at her?" He looked at the photo on his desk. Sandra, younger, sunlit, smiling in a way he hadn't seen in the end. "No," he said. "Just sad." Lily nodded once, like she understood. Then, softly, "You won't send me back, right?" Jacob met her eyes. "No," he said. "I won't." She stood there a beat longer, then turned and left the room. When the door clicked shut behind her, Jacob placed a hand on the folder and exhaled. There were answers he needed, some buried in Sandra's past, others wrapped in Mark Donovan's empire. But one thing was certain. This time, he wouldn't walk away. Rain tapped gently against the penthouse windows, the kind of steady, whispering drizzle that turned city lights into watercolor smudges. Seattle stretched out below, blurred and glowing, too distant to matter. Inside, the apartment breathed a softer rhythm. No calls, no deadlines, just the hush of evening settling in. Jacob found Lily on the couch, curled beneath the same blanket she'd taken to every night. A book rested in her lap, open, though she hadn't turned the page in some time. Her eyes tracked the words, but her fingers sat still on the corners. He hovered near the doorway for a moment longer than necessary, watching her like this, quiet, thoughtful, too still for her age. It made the weight in his chest shift again, just slightly. "Hey," he said, stepping in. Lily glanced up but didn't smile. "Hi." He nodded at the book. "How's it end?" She closed it slowly. "The same as last time." Jacob eased onto the chair opposite her, elbows on knees, gaze low. The rain behind him cast faint ripples of light along the hardwood floor. "I've been thinking about something," he said. Lily tilted her head, waiting. "Do you ever wonder about your dad?" She blinked once. Her voice didn't change. "No." Jacob hesitated, not even a little. She shook her head. "If he wanted to know me, he would have come. People find things when they want to." He looked at her, really looked. Not just the shape of her face, or the way her voice always seemed to carry more truth than she meant, but the calm certainty behind what she'd said. She hadn't flinched, hadn't tried to soften it for him. "Fair point," he murmured. Lily tucked her feet under her. "The kids at the home used to make stuff up, like, 'My dad's a race car driver,' or 'My dad's the mayor.' A beat. I said mine was invisible. That way nobody could prove me wrong." Jacob tried to smile, but it didn't land. "I knew a man once," he said slowly. "Smart, powerful, made people listen when he walked into a room." "Was he your friend?" Jacob gave a soft breath of a laugh. He was something else. Bad? Not in the way stories make people bad, but cold. He didn't care who got hurt, as long as he won. Lily thought about that. "Is that who you think might be my dad?" Jacob didn't answer at first. She looked down. "It's okay. I don't need to know." He leaned forward. "But what if it mattered?" She met his gaze. "It doesn't. Not to me." Silence fell between them. The rain picked up, tapping harder against the windows. "I used to think," Lily said, almost to herself, "that if I was really good, like extra good, maybe he'd come looking, like he'd hear about it through the sky or something." Jacob's throat tightened. "That's a heavy thing to carry." She shrugged. "It got lighter when I stopped waiting." Jacob stood and walked to the window. The lights of the city shimmered under the rain, all golden halos and ghosted outlines. He pressed his palm gently against the glass. "She ever tell you about New York?" he asked. Lily nodded. She said it was too loud, but she liked it. "She once fell asleep on a bench in Times Square," Jacob said, a half smile tugging at his lips. "Said the noise made her feel safe." "I get that," Lily replied. "Noise helps me not think too hard." He turned back to her, the memory folding between them. Lily looked up again. "Do you think she wanted me to be with you?" "I think," Jacob said. She didn't know how to hope for that. Lily thought for a moment. "But you think she did?" "I do." She nodded. They didn't speak for a while after that, just the two of them in the quiet, the storm outside steady and familiar. Then Lily asked, "Have you ever been left?" Jacob didn't answer right away. He walked back to the chair and sat, slower this time. "Yes," he said, "once, and I didn't know until much later." Lily stared at her book again. "Did it make you angry?" "No," he said, "it made me small." She looked at him for a long second, then whispered, "Me too." Jacob leaned back in the chair. "I'm not going anywhere, Lily." She didn't say anything, but she didn't look away. From the counter, his phone buzzed again, Daniel's name glowing on the screen. Jacob didn't move. Lily noticed. "You're not going to answer?" "Not tonight," he said. "Not now." And that was that. She reached for her book again, resting it in her lap without opening it. Jacob stood, crossed the room, and turned off one of the lamps, leaving just the faint golden light from the city outside. When he returned, he didn't take the chair again. He sat beside her, careful not to touch. She didn't move. But then, slowly, deliberately, she leaned. Her shoulder pressed gently into his arm. Not a question, not a test, just wait, small, warm, real. And Jacob didn't move. Not away, not anymore. Morning sunlight trickled in through half-drawn blinds, soft and gold, pooling on the marble kitchen floor like something fragile. The air smelled faintly of vanilla and warm milk, with none of the bitter sting of black coffee. Something small had shifted in the penthouse, less like a change, more like an echo returning to a space that had forgotten sound. Jacob stirred the saucepan slowly, watching the milk swirl into the chocolate powder Lily had insisted was better than anything store-bought. She sat at the island, her legs swinging just above the footrest, humming something under her breath. There was a second mug on the counter now, a second toothbrush in the bathroom, a tiny pair of sneakers by the door. "Is it ready?" she asked, craning her neck. "Almost," Jacob said. "Don't rush greatness." Lily smirked. "You said that yesterday, and it was lumpy." "I'm evolving," he muttered. She giggled, really giggled, not the breathy, guarded sort of laugh she usually gave. It caught him off guard. He poured the hot chocolate and passed her the mug with both hands, careful not to spill. She took a sip, then nodded with exaggerated approval. "This one's less bad." Jacob feigned offense. "You're a tough critic." That's what Joan said too. She glanced down into the mug. She used to burn everything, but always smiled like it was gourmet. He smiled softly, then sat down across from her with his own mug. For a few minutes, they ate toast and banana slices in companionable silence. No rush, no ringing phones, no agenda. Lily tilted her head. "You never used to eat breakfast, huh?" Jacob blinked. "How do you know?" "You don't have breakfast plates," she said simply. "Just the big ones." He couldn't help but laugh. "You're observant." She shrugged, chewing. "It's easier to see things when people forget to hide them." Jacob fell quiet. He glanced over at the mirror near the hallway, caught a glimpse of himself. Unkempt stubble, half-buttoned shirt, socks that didn't match. He almost didn't recognize the man looking back. But Lily did. After she rinsed her dish and stacked it precisely in the sink, she paused at the hallway. "Do you ever miss being alone?" she asked. Jacob blinked. "No," he said after a moment. "I think I just didn't realize how quiet could be." She nodded once, like that made sense. His phone buzzed again. "Daniel." This time, Jacob answered. "Blake here." "Morning." Daniel's voice came brisk and clipped. "You'll want to hear this. Mark Donovan's private jet touched down in Seattle early this morning. Charter flight, 2 assistants, no press." Jacob stood, turning toward the window. "You think it's a coincidence?" "I think Donovan doesn't do coincidence," Daniel said. "We've flagged movement. His office hasn't released a statement, but something's coming." Jacob let that settle. "Do nothing," he said. Daniel hesitated. "You sure?" "I am. Even if, Jacob said firmly. "Let him move. We're not handing Lily off like a parcel." Daniel's voice dropped a note. "So what now?" Jacob looked back at the kitchen. Lily had wandered back in, flipping through the battered school brochure he'd left on the counter days ago. "I've already booked a tour for Thursday," Jacob said. "I'll take her." Daniel whistled. "You're really doing this?" "She's not a file. She's not leverage. And if Donovan thinks she is, he can walk straight back to whatever fortress he crawled out of." Silence. Then Daniel chuckled. "You're starting to sound like someone who cares." Jacob ended the call without replying. He turned back to Lily. She looked up from the brochure. "Is this real?" she asked. "The school?" he asked. She nodded. "Or all of it?" He stepped forward, leaned on the counter. "It's real if you want it to be. I don't have uniforms. We'll get some. And I don't know how to talk to other kids. Talk about books, or pancakes, or pigeons with 1 foot." She grinned. He was brave. "I believe it," Jacob said. She hesitated. "If I mess it up?" "You won't." "But if I do?" "You still stay," he said. "Okay?" Lily's shoulders softened. "Okay." He watched her trace the edge of the brochure, and something in his chest unfolded, like a page turning after years of being stuck together. Later, while she disappeared into her room, Jacob passed the hallway mirror again. This time, he paused. The man staring back was tired, rumpled, still not sure what came next. But there was something new in his eyes, something like purpose. Not power, not wealth, just presence. He adjusted the frame slightly, then walked away. The afternoon light fell in slanted beams through the office windows, streaking across the mahogany desk where a single envelope sat untouched. The rest of the room was in its usual order, clean, measured, precise. But the envelope did not belong to that world. It carried weight that had nothing to do with paper. Jacob stared at it for a long time. He didn't open it right away. Daniel stood a few feet off, hands tucked into his coat pockets. "It's conclusive," he said. "No ambiguity in the markers. He's the father." Jacob nodded once. He didn't need to hear it twice. Daniel added, "It's not in any official system yet. We kept it out of public channels, but this won't stay quiet forever." Jacob reached for the envelope, then paused. Did Sandra know? "We'll never know for sure," Daniel said quietly, "but she filed the test request. That has to mean something." Jacob ran a hand across his mouth. "She left it undone." "Maybe she already had her answer," Daniel offered. Jacob didn't reply. He slipped the envelope into the top drawer of his desk and closed it with a quiet click. Daniel watched him for a moment longer. "You want me to run a trace on Donovan's current location?" "No," Jacob said. "If he's in Seattle, he'll make a move. I don't want him hearing anything from us first." Daniel gave a short nod. "You still planning to tell Lily?" Jacob's jaw worked. She has a right to know, but not if it puts her back in the dark. When Daniel left, Jacob didn't go back to work. He just sat, staring at the drawer like it might rattle open on its own. The truth was now tangible, clear, clinical, undeniable, and it didn't matter. That evening, the penthouse felt heavier, not colder. Lily had brought warmth, but dense, like something was suspended in the air between them. She noticed. "You're quiet tonight," she said, as she stirred the soup on the stove. It was her turn to cook, something she'd insisted on. "Usually you talk more when I'm burning things." Jacob tried to smile. "You didn't burn it." "Not yet." She tasted the broth, made a face. "Maybe a little." He leaned on the counter. "Do you ever wish you could know more about where you came from?" Lily's hand paused mid-stir. "Why?" "Just curious," he said. "Some people want to know, some don't." She set the spoon down. "Did you find something out?" Jacob met her eyes. Her tone stayed calm, but her shoulders had tensed slightly. "You're doing the stare thing again." He blinked. "The what?" "You know, the thing where your eyes stay, but your head's far away." He sat across from her at the island. "I found out something. About someone." Lily didn't move. "Is it about my dad?" Jacob nodded slowly. "Yes." She watched him carefully. "You're not saying it. That means it's something bad." "No," he said gently. "Just complicated." Lily crossed her arms on the counter. "Is he alive?" "Yes." "Rich?" Jacob hesitated. "Yes." "Do I know him?" "No." She was quiet for a moment. Then she asked, "Do you think he'd want to meet me?" Jacob didn't answer right away. "I don't know," he said truthfully, "but I think he'll find out. Eventually." Lily nodded, eyes drifting toward the window. "Did my mum know who he was?" She might have suspected, but I don't think she was sure. Or maybe she was, and just didn't want it confirmed. Silence again. Finally, Lily asked, "Why didn't you tell me right away?" "Because this—" Jacob leaned forward slightly. "This isn't about him. It's about you. You get to choose if you want to know more, or not at all." Lily looked down at her hands. "I used to dream he'd be a nice man, that he'd show up with a backpack full of stories and a dog named Trouble." Jacob smiled faintly. "Sounds like a good man." She shrugged. "I stopped having that dream." He nodded. "It's still your choice, Lily. I'll support you either way." After a moment, she said quietly, "What if I don't want to meet him? Ever?" "Then we don't open that door," Jacob said. "Simple as that." She gave a small nod, then got up and walked to the sink, rinsing her spoon. Her back was to him when she spoke again. You already know who he is, don't you? Yes. Is it someone dangerous? Jacob paused. Not in the way you're thinking, but powerful, and not always kind. Lily turned slightly. Then I think I've met enough powerful people. He couldn't argue with that. That night, after Lily had gone to bed, Jacob sat alone in his office. The envelope was back on the desk. He opened it slowly, not for the result, but for the name, just one more time. Mark Donovan. He lit the edge of the paper with a match from the drawer. The flame curled around the words until the name disappeared in a soft black twist. When it was ash, he let it fall into the tray. Some truths didn't need to be said. Not now. Maybe not ever. The conference room on the 47th floor of Sterling West Tower was stripped of comfort. Glass walls, steel chairs, a long obsidian table that gleamed too sharply in the morning light. The kind of place where billion-dollar decisions were made without emotion. Jacob Blake sat at one end, his hands folded, his expression carved from stone. Across from him, a chair sat empty. It didn't stay that way long. Mark Donovan entered without announcement, like he owned the silence. Sharp suit, perfectly knotted tie, calm eyes that didn't blink. He offered a polite smile that didn't reach his mouth. Jacob, he said evenly, voice deep and cool, appreciate you agreeing to meet. Jacob didn't stand. You said it was urgent. Mark glanced at the view. Always thought this city was too wet for something permanent, but here you are. Jacob didn't respond, just waited. Mark finally sat, adjusting the cuff of his sleeve. I know you've seen the results. I didn't need them to know, Jacob said. But yes. Mark nodded, as if confirming something to himself. Then, we can skip the denials. You weren't on the birth certificate, Jacob said, tone flat. Sandra didn't name you, didn't want you involved. That should have told you something. It told me she was afraid, Mark said. Of you? Of what it meant, Mark corrected, voice quieter. She knew I couldn't offer her what you did. Jacob's jaw tightened. That doesn't make you a father. Mark leaned forward, voice still composed. I'm not here to play the role. I'm not asking for custody. I'm not looking to disrupt her life. But I am her biological father. And I'd like the chance to write her a letter. Jacob stared at him. Hard, unmoving. She's not a project, he said. Not a quarterly return. You don't get to call it personal growth and expect it to matter. I'm not here to be absolved, Mark said, then added after a pause, I've made mistakes. Many. But I'm not coming to erase them, I'm here to acknowledge them. You think a letter fixes that? Jacob asked, voice sharp. No, Mark admitted, but it's a start. For her. Or maybe for me. A beat passed. The hum of air conditioning filled the space between them. Jacob's voice dropped. You don't get access to her mind. Not if I think you're trying to buy your way in. Not with charm. Not with guilt. Not with history. Mark nodded once. I understand. No, Jacob said, you don't. Because this isn't about legacy or image. This is about a girl who never asked for any of this. Mark's mask slipped just a little. And yet, she was born into it. She was born into grief, Jacob snapped, into silence, and she survived, without you. The words hung in the air, sharp, undeniable. Daniel stood outside the glass wall, arms crossed, watching like a sentry. He didn't move, but his posture said everything. One wrong move, and this door closes forever. Mark folded his hands on the table. May I write the letter? Jacob's silence stretched. Then finally, one page, one envelope. I read it first. If there's even a trace of pressure, manipulation, or guilt in your words. She never sees it. And you never get another chance. Mark gave a small nod. Understood. You don't mention money, Jacob added. You don't call her my daughter. You don't try to rewrite the past. Fair. Jacob's eyes locked on his. This is her story now, not yours. Mark's voice was quiet. I'm trying not to take anything, just offer something. Jacob didn't respond. He stood. Mark remained seated. As Jacob walked to the door, he paused, then turned back. One more thing, he said. You had decades to become a better man. Don't try to cram it into a paragraph. Mark's gaze didn't waver. I won't. Jacob exited, the door clicking shut behind him. He didn't look back. Daniel straightened. Well? He wants to write a letter, Jacob said, voice unreadable. Daniel raised an eyebrow. And you're letting him? I'm giving her the option, Jacob said. That's different. They walked toward the elevator. The city unfolded below them, busy, distracted, unaware that somewhere in a tower above, a man had just made a decision that had nothing to do with power, and everything to do with protection. In his pocket, Jacob's phone buzzed. A text from Lily. Will you be home for lunch? He smiled. Already on my way. Light poured gently into the penthouse through linen curtains, the morning sun soft and dappled on the wooden floors. A faint breeze moved through a crack in the window, carrying with it the muted sounds of the city waking far below. The air was warm with the scent of cinnamon toast and the quiet weight of something unspoken. Lily sat cross-legged on the rug by the couch, the envelope unopened in her hands. Jacob stood a few feet away, arms crossed lightly, watching her, but not pressing. When you're ready, he had said. That was 10 minutes ago. Lily's thumb traced the edge of the flap, eyes fixed on the handwriting, clean, slanted, careful. Nothing like Sandra's. She finally peeled it open and read. Jacob turned away, giving her space. He busied himself at the counter, pouring coffee, though he didn't drink it. Time stretched in silence, only broken by the faint turning of a page. Then quietly, Did he mean it? Lily asked. Jacob looked up. The letter? She nodded. Did he really want to know me? Or is it just guilt? Jacob walked over, pulled out the chair across from her, and sat down. His voice was low. Maybe it's both, he said. But it doesn't really matter what he feels. What matters is what you choose. Who gets to stay? Lily looked down at the letter again. He said he always wondered if he had a daughter. But he didn't look. Not really. No, Jacob said. He didn't. She folded the letter once, then again. Then she set it down on the coffee table, face down. I don't need another, maybe. Jacob reached across the space and placed his hand gently over hers. She didn't pull away. I've got you, he said. I know, Lily whispered. A few hours later, Jacob drove her downtown. They didn't speak much in the car. Lily watched the blur of people and buses and blinking lights pass by. The letter sat in her backpack, zipped in an inside pocket. They arrived at a quiet cafe tucked between office towers. No press, no spectacle. Just one man already seated at the far end, back straight, a glass of water untouched in front of him. Mark Donovan stood as they entered. Lily froze in the doorway. Jacob felt her shift beside him and placed a light hand on her shoulder. You can leave, he said softly. Right now. No pressure. Lily shook her head. Barely. They walked toward the table. Mark's eyes softened when he saw her, genuine emotion flickering in a face usually made of armor. He stepped forward, almost reflexively, arms starting to lift. Lily stepped back. Subtle, instinctual, but unmistakable. Then she moved slightly behind Jacob, one hand brushing the back of his coat. Mark's arms dropped. I'm sorry, he said quickly, voice quieter than it had ever been. That was lives. Presumptuous. Jacob said nothing. Lily peeked out from behind him, her face unreadable. Mark met her gaze. I wrote the letter because I didn't know what else to do. Words are all I've ever been good at. Lily didn't respond. I know what I missed, Mark continued. I know I can't get that back. But if there's any space in your life, even the smallest corner, where I could exist, I would be grateful. She stared at him for a long time, then asked simply, Did you ever really love me? The question landed like a brick between them. Mark blinked, visibly shaken. His voice cracked when he spoke. I didn't know how, he admitted, but when I found out about you, it broke something in me, and I've never wanted to rebuild anything more. Silence. Lily looked down, then up, then at Jacob. Jacob didn't speak, just met her eyes. A quiet, yes, if she needed it. She took a small step forward, not close, just enough. I don't know if I trust you, she said, but I'll let you try. Just slowly. Mark's breath caught. That's more than I deserve. I know, she said. Jacob's lips curled at the edge, pride and sadness in equal measure. Mark didn't try to touch her again. He didn't ask for more. They left the cafe 20 minutes later, nothing resolved, but something released. In the car, Lily stared out the window, quiet. Jacob drove without music, letting the silence fill without pressure. At a stoplight, Lily spoke. I still don't need another dad. I know, Jacob said, but maybe I can let him write again. Jacob nodded. Only if you want. She turned her head toward him. You're not going anywhere, right? He glanced at her. I'm already here. She leaned her head against the window and closed her eyes. Jacob kept driving, and outside, the city pulsed on. Same noise, same streets, but for one girl and one man, something had changed. A choice had been made, and for the first time in a long time, it didn't feel like the end of something. It felt like the beginning. The lake shimmered beneath the golden haze of late afternoon. Ripples caught the light like broken glass, soft and glowing, as ducks drifted lazily near the edge. The trees leaned into the breeze, their branches whispering above the heads of three figures sitting quietly on a bench by the water. Jacob sat on one end, elbows on his knees, watching the lake. Mark took the other end, back straight, hands clasped between his legs. In the middle, Lily sat cross-legged, a melting ice cream cone in her hand, and a thoughtful expression on her face. No one spoke for a while, not because there was nothing to say, but because, for once, silence didn't feel like distance. Lily licked the cone absently, eyes tracking the ducks. She would have liked this, she said finally. Jacob looked at her. Sandra? Lily nodded. She liked quiet places with water, said it made the noise in her head go soft. Mark shifted slightly, eyes focused on the reflection of clouds on the surface. She used to say that to me too, he murmured. I never understood it then. You didn't understand a lot, Lily said, not cruelly, just honestly. Mark nodded once. That's true. Lily's shoulders rose and fell with a small sigh. I don't know what I'm supposed to feel. You don't have to know, Jacob said gently. Not today. She glanced up at him, then looked at Mark. I still don't really trust you, she said plainly. Mark didn't flinch. I wouldn't either. But I think I want to see if I can, she added, more to herself than to him. Mark swallowed hard. That's all I could hope for. A breeze moved through the trees, scattering a few yellow leaves across the path. Lily smiled slightly, watching them drift. Do you ever wonder, she asked suddenly, why people fall out of your life without warning, but when they come back, it's like they were never gone? Jacob glanced at her. That's a complicated question. Lily tilted her head. You think maybe it's because some part of them never really left? Mark looked down. Or maybe they always meant to come back but didn't know how. Lily took another bite of her cone, eyes squinting toward the water as the sun dipped lower. She turned to Mark. Why now? He didn't answer right away. Then he said, because the day I found out about you, everything else stopped mattering. Not in a dramatic movie way. Just quietly. Like I couldn't think straight until I at least tried. Lily nodded slowly. Okay. Mark blinked. Okay. I'm still figuring it out, she said, but you can sit here. For now. Jacob let out a breath he hadn't realized he'd been holding. Mark smiled. Not broadly, not triumphantly. Just enough to say, I'll take it. A pair of elderly strangers walked past them. The woman leaned slightly on her cane. As they passed, she whispered something to her husband, who chuckled softly and nodded. Mark turned to Jacob, voice low. What did she say? Jacob smirked. She said it's good the girl has 2 men looking out for her. Mark looked away, face unreadable, then murmured, She's wrong. Jacob arched a brow. Oh? She doesn't have 2 men looking out for her, Mark said. She has one, and one trying to earn the right. Lily looked between them and shook her head. You two are weird. Jacob grinned. That's accurate. She leaned her head lightly against Jacob's shoulder. Mark didn't try to move closer. He stayed still, watching her from where he sat, a careful distance that meant something now. After a while, Lily turned and pulled something from her pocket. The letter, slightly crumpled at the edges. She handed it to Mark. You can write again, she said, but this time, don't talk to the past. Talk to me. Mark nodded, eyes shining just a little. I will. Jacob didn't speak, but he didn't have to. As the sun began to slip behind the trees, casting warm orange light across the water, Lily stretched her legs and stood. Can we get pizza? She asked. Any toppings you want, Jacob said. No pineapple, Mark added quickly. She narrowed her eyes. We're not negotiating that yet. They laughed, the sound unexpected, light. They started walking back toward the street. Lily in the middle again, one hand brushing Jacob's sleeve, the other tugging Mark forward. No final words, no dramatic vows. Just a girl and 2 men. One who stayed, one who came back, walking together in the soft light of forgiveness. And for once, that was enough. The story didn't end with resolution. It ended with presence. And presence sometimes is the purest kind of love. What do you think about this story so far? Has Jacob's quiet transformation and Lily's resilience moved you in any way? For me, it's a powerful reminder that family isn't always about blood. It's about showing up, staying, and choosing love, even when it's complicated. What life lesson did it leave with you?